All right, welcome everyone to today's Explainer, where we're going to tackle what I honestly consider to be the ultimate biological puzzle. As a cytogenetics professor, this is literally one of my absolute favorite topics to talk about. We're looking at exactly how our cells pack just vast, unbelievable amounts of genetic information into incredibly microscopic spaces. I mean, it's a feat of biological engineering that makes our most advanced modern data storage look downright primitive.
So, think about this for a second. How exactly do you fit 3,000 megabases of the human genome into a cellular nucleus that is entirely invisible to the naked eye? Just imagine trying to cram miles and miles of extremely fragile thread into a tiny thimble, without letting it tangle even a little bit, and while still being able to pull up and read specific microscopic instructions printed along that thread at a moment's notice. It sounds totally impossible, right? But your cells are doing this perfectly every single second.
Okay, so here's our game plan for today. We'll start with 1, the DNA packing problem, 2, spools and threads, histones, 3, 10,000-fold compaction, 4, chromatin, active versus silenced, 5, anatomy of a chromosome, and we'll wrap up with 6, karyotypes and genetic disorders. All right, diving right in. Section 1, the DNA packing problem. Before we can even begin to understand the solution to packing all this DNA, we really have to grasp the mind-boggling scale of the material we're dealing with here. The term we use for these packaged DNA units is, of course, chromosome. Now, historically, and this is a fun little cytogenetics fact, early scientists looking through microscopes noticed these distinct structures in the cell took up dye really well, so they just named them using the Greek words chromos, meaning color, and soma, meaning body. These color bodies are the literal physical structures made up of the DNA, some highly specific proteins called histones, and a few other non-histone proteins.
Now look at this comparison here. It's kind of wild. You'd probably assume that a more complex organism naturally has a larger genome, or just a ton more chromosomes, right? But check this out. We humans have a genome size of 3,000 megabases packed into 23 distinct chromosome pairs. Now look at the dog. A dog has the exact same genome size, 3,000 megabases, but it's spread across 39 chromosomes. And the lily? Wow. A seemingly simple flower has a staggering 50,000 megabytes of genetic material packaged into just 12 chromosomes. So the big takeaway here is that organism complexity absolutely does not equal the highest chromosome count or the largest genome size.
Moving right along, Section 2, spools and threads, histones.
So we need to zoom all the way down to the microscopic level to see the primary, totally ingenious tool the cell uses to solve this crazy packing problem. Think of your DNA as the thread and a specialized cluster of proteins as the spool. This spool is called a histone octamer. It's basically made of 2 copies each of 4 different proteins, H2A, H2B, H3, and H4. The DNA double helix wraps around this core exactly 1.65 times, which uses up about 146 base pairs of DNA. We call this entire little unit a nucleosome. But to keep that thread from just unspooling, the cell uses a very specific lock. Enter the H1 histone. When this H1 histone clips onto the structure, locking 2 full turns of DNA, or 166 base pairs, perfectly into place, this entire locked-down spool is what we call a chromatosome.
Okay, but you might be wondering, how do these proteins grip that DNA thread so tightly in the first place? Well, it all comes down to the biochemistry. Histones are just incredibly rich in basic amino acids, specifically lysine and arginine. Look at the H1 locking histone right here. It's nearly 31% lysine and arginine. And here's why that matters. DNA has a negatively charged sugar phosphate backbone, so these positively charged basic amino acids basically act like literal magnets. They bind to the DNA magnetically, holding the whole coiled structure perfectly intact without needing to form permanent chemical bonds.
Which brings us to Section 3, 10,000-fold compaction. We've built the microscopic spools. Now let's watch how these structures stack upon themselves as we slowly zoom our microscopes out. This journey of compaction happens in highly organized steps. Step 1 is just your naked double-stranded DNA helix, sitting at just 2 nanometers wide. Step 2 is when that DNA wraps around the histones we just talked about, creating this beautiful beads-on-a-string appearance that we call the 10-nanometer chromatin fiber. In Step 3, things get serious. Those nucleosome beads coil tightly together into a much thicker 30-nanometer fiber, known as a solenoid. And finally, in Step 4, those solenoid fibers loop, fold, and compress intensely to build the solid, recognizable metaphase chromosome we can actually see under a standard light microscope.
And this visual brilliantly illustrates that exact transition. Just look at this electron micrograph showing the 10-nanometer fiber condensing. As it compresses into that thicker 30-nanometer solenoid fiber, you can see how about 6 separate nucleosomes group together to form a single turn of the ring. It is a stunningly organized geometric coil. It's essentially taking a delicate, easily broken string and twisting it into a really robust, sturdy cable.
10,000. By the time this whole coiling process reaches its absolute peak during the metaphase stage of cell division, the DNA has been compacted nearly 10,000-fold. Think about that. It is 10,000 times shorter and thicker than its uncoiled state. Honestly, it is the only physical way a massive, fragile genome can be safely moved around when a cell divides without snapping into a million pieces.
All right, moving to section 4, chromatin, active versus silenced.
Now here's the catch. How tightly this DNA is packed doesn't just keep it organized, it directly dictates whether the cell can actually read and use those genes at all. We classify this packaging into 2 very different states. First, we have euchromatin. This is despiralized and relatively loose. Because it's loose, the cell's machinery can get in there, read the genes, and do its job. It is transcriptionally active. Think of it as an open book. Heterochromatin, on the flip side, is super densely packed and transcriptionally inactive. The cellular machinery just can't get in. It's totally shut down, like a locked safe, and it often contains highly repetitive DNA sequences that don't even code for immediate protein products.
Check out the visual proof of this under an electron microscope. On the left, in the interphase nucleus, you see mostly that loose euchromatin. See how it looks kind of granular and diffuse? That's because the cell is actively reading those open books to survive and function day to day. But on the right, look at those stained metaphase chromosomes. They are solid, highly distinct bodies of heterochromatin. Everything is locked tightly in the safe for safe transport during division. No reading is happening here.
But wait, it gets a bit more nuanced. Within that locked heterochromatin, there are 2 distinct functional types you need to know. Facultative heterochromatin acts flexibly. These are genes that happen to be silenced right now, maybe through mechanisms like histone deacetylation, but under the right developmental or environmental cues, they can lose their condensed structure, wake up, and become fully active again. Constitutive heterochromatin, however, is rigid. It's permanently condensed because its role is purely structural. It forms the essential load-bearing parts of the chromosome like the centromeres in the middle and the telomeres at the very ends.
Section 5. Anatomy of a chromosome.
So now that we've built the structure from the ground up and established the rules of packing, let's look at the final recognizable metaphase structure. Here we see that classic X shape of a metaphase chromosome. It's made of 2 identical halves called sister chromatids, which are tightly held together at that pinched waist region called the centromere. That centromere is absolutely vital, by the way. It's where the kinetochore forms, acting as a structural handle that the cell physically grabs and pulls on during division. And those ends? Those are protected by telomeres, which shield the vital genetic code from degrading. Honestly, they act exactly like those little plastic aglets on the ends of your shoelaces to keep them from fraying.
Now, a quick genetics recap, because understanding how these are passed down requires knowing 2 crucial terms. Haploid, usually designated as an N, means a cell contains just 1 single copy of every chromosome. Human gametes, our reproductive cells, are haploid. When they fuse together, they create a diploid cell, or 2N. Your somatic cells, so, your skin, liver, heart cells, are diploid. They carry 2 matching sets of homologous chromosomes, 1 inherited from each of your parents.
And finally, Section 6, Karyotypes and Genetic Disorders.
This is where all of this hits home. We're going to relate all these microscopic packaging mechanisms directly to observable human clinical conditions. What you're looking at here is a human karyogram. Basically, it's a complete visual library of the human genome. By staining the chromosomes with specific techniques like GM's banding, cytogeneticists can see distinct stripe patterns of light and dark bands. These visual markers let us sort the 46 chromosomes into 23 beautifully ordered pairs, identifying each one based on its size, its banding pattern, the exact placement of its centromere, and the defined telomere ends capping the arms. It's incredible detective work.
When analyzing these karyograms, doctors are specifically looking for structural aberrations, which are essentially massive packaging errors, and we use a shorthand to describe them. We use del for a deletion of genetic material, in for an inversion, where a segment is flipped backwards, T for a translocation, where pieces actually break off and attach to entirely different chromosomes, and PCD for premature centromere division. You guys, this isn't just microscopic trivia. These precise structural errors directly lead to very real, observable human developmental genetic disorders.
And to add to that, remember the constitutive heterochromatin we talked about earlier? Well, repetitive DNA sequences actually make up a staggering 50% of the entire human genome. While a lot of this is structural or regulatory, when these repetitive sequences move around or mistakenly interrupt the vital coding regions of actual genes, it completely disrupts the instructions. Faulty gene silencing and these sequence errors are the biological root of many significant clinical health outcomes.
So let's step back and consider everything we've just covered today. We've gone from a 2-nanometer invisible thread to a fully packaged 10,000-fold folded chromosome that literally dictates human health. If just a single microscopic packing error, like one misplaced spool, one failed lock, in this vast architecture can fundamentally alter human development, what other astonishing secrets are still waiting to be discovered in the way our DNA is folded? Keep that in the back of your mind as you continue your studies. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. And remember, keep questioning the microscopic world.